Forward Media. This is Healthcare Musings. I'm your host, Dr. Hashem Hasabala. Welcome to Healthcare Musings, everybody. Happy to have you with me. I am so delighted and honored to have Marion Spears Karr, a friend of mine, a brother in arms, on the podcast. He has a very unique and amazing neuroscience-based leadership training, and I'll make sure I get this right. It's called the Authentic Gratitude, and correct me, Marion, what's the CF? What's the CF?
Framework. Yeah,
Communication framework. See, the Authentic Gratitude Communication Framework. It's been an eye-opener for me. I started using, I want to work with him more. I think I want to publish with him. I think I want to bring his training to the teams that I have, that I work with. It's really, and it's neuroscience based. It's based on his own amazing story that I want him to get into. And so just had to have him on the podcast because it's so pertinent to healthcare and healthcare leadership today. So Marion, it's an honor to have you in the show. Welcome.
Absolutely. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and great to connect with you, and great to support what you're doing on your podcast, and am looking forward to us finding ways to collaborate on the work that we're doing. So glad to be here, man. Just glad
Absolutely.
to be
here. Oh, so I'm so happy to have you. So why don't you get into your first, if you don't mind sharing your story about what happened to you, is really, as an intensivist, it's just fascinating. And I think it's shaped a lot of who you are and what you're doing in the healthcare space. So if you don't mind sharing with the audience your story, and then we can get into the gratitude communication framework training. So please.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know me, I am Marion Spears Karr. If you don't recognize the accent, I'm from the foothills of the mountains of North Carolina, and now live in the mountains of Georgia. As a teenager, growing up around Charlotte, North Carolina, what used to be a little community called Concord, I got involved in European cycling, of all things. Most people wouldn't know that even was a sport in the U.S. in the 70s, but it was, and Charlotte was kind of ground zero for it. It was complete happenstance. Rather than playing the traditional sport, cycling and also skateboarding were my life. It broke my dad's heart that I didn't want to play baseball anymore. It really was a crushing blow to him that baseball was not in the cards for me. But I became very enamored with cycling and was training very, very hard. Got the opportunity to ride over in England and train and do a bunch of things as a teenager that a lot of teenagers, particularly from the blue collar area that I was from, would get to do. God bless me throughout that journey. The week I graduated high school, though, my life changed dramatically. I was training for a race. I just graduated that week, and on a very casual training ride by myself in the late afternoon, got hit by a car. And of course, this was 1981, when the only time we wore helmets was during the race. And then those were the little strap helmets that were completely useless. I'm not even sure what the point of them were, but, like they were pointless, right? Like you're just leather padding, it was like, anyway, I got hit from behind. It threw me into a telephone pole.
Oh my God.
I broke 2 vertebrae in my neck, fractured my skull, had an occipital lobe fracture, fractured all the ribs on my right side, and was in serious distress and unconscious. The person who got to me first, this was in a community downtown Concord on the main street of town, happened to be, not happens, I think this is God's providence, was a gentleman, Dr. James Keel. Dr. Keel was one of the very first intensivists. You and I have talked about that, an ICU specialist, a Duke graduate, that was young in his career at the time. He put the story goes, and he shares that when we become friends, and anyway, long story short, he put my jaw back in place so that I could breathe until EMS could get there. I was first transported to the local hospital and then transported to the neuro ICU in Charlotte at what now is Atrium or Advocate. Anyway, the story is, though, and this is where the miracle took place. I didn't have any of the physical manifestations of a typical brain injury of my type. Um, I was a very good student. I was about to start college on an undergraduate, full academic scholarship. Where the issues were came later. My short-term memory became almost non-existent. I had to learn how to read differently. I could still read, but I had to learn how to read differently to put it into my brain. There was a period of time that I lost all my long pieces of my memory, that I lost my long-term memory. I lost the ability to hear in my right ear, completely deaf in my right ear, partially deaf in my left. And I went on to college with a lot of help and a lot of people around me, and et cetera. But here's where the story goes. Over time, the degradation of my brain injury became more and more apparent. I made a lot of bad decisions. I was angry. I had outbursts. I struggled with relationships. I mean, the list kind of goes on and on and on. And I was very blessed that I didn't have, paralysis or anything like that. But I had to learn how to learn again. And I had to learn how to manage that. And it took me years. It took me years. And you can see moments in my life where that was, where it reared its, forgive the pun and the metaphor at the same time, it reared its ugly head. And so over the years, I realized that gratitude for me, being grateful first that I didn't die, right? That could have been it. And my relationship with God then probably wasn't as on good ground. That's probably not a good time to die, I mean, I admit that. And I'll be honest with you on that. And so I was given that opportunity. And then, long story short, through my career path, I did not choose healthcare necessarily. I got into the recruiting business in 1991 and ended up choosing healthcare because there was a lot of jobs available out there. And we figured that was the space. And ever since 91, I've been doing that work in some form or fashion. Started a couple different companies, started a new company. But the whole time, and this is where you tie the whole thing back to your question, the whole time I was trying to learn around how to communicate differently, how to manage my brain injury, how to manage, and I had other concussions afterwards that made the situation worse. And we can go into that on another moment. But here's the thing. I wanted to understand why leaders were certain way, presented themselves in certain ways. And what was it? What were the characteristics that stood out among the best leaders? And it came down to three things. It came down to, not in any particular order, the best leaders were one, they're always learning. So I embraced lifelong learning. You and I have talked about that. Like you, I'm constantly reading, constantly learning. I don't have the healthcare educational background that you have, but that's one. That's the first thing. The second thing is that they stay grounded with their heart. Where their heart is what's their heart for the work like. And I think that's the second thing that did define great leaders in my opinion. But the third one was they seemed grateful about everything. They were truly great. They're truly, I'm blending two words there. You got to see my brain injury in real time there, y'all. Everybody watching the podcast or listening to the podcast. They were truly grateful and thankful for the ability to do what they do. And that took me down the rabbit hole. It's like, what could we figure out a way to train leaders? Obviously, we can't train them to find their heart for the work, but we can train them to help figure out what they're grateful for and how that would change how they led, how their teams operated. And there's a lot of work to be done. And that's the rabbit hole I went down, and I became completely obsessed with it. And that's what started this journey.
That's so amazing, and thank you for sharing your story. I'm sure it's difficult, and I can't even imagine what it must have been like to go through that, And so that's, I'm honored that you were able to share that story, and it just shapes. Nothing happens by accident, right? And I think it's just shaped what you are and the work that you're doing. Just like what happened with my daughter, I had mentioned on
Yeah.
your show. She passed away on the 7th of June, 17 years ago, and that has shaped my practice of medicine ever since.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I learned that sometimes, um, you know, a tragedy that you could go through can allow you to be a mercy for other people. And I think you are a mercy for so many people to teach them to be grateful leaders. And I think my daughter has been a mercy to help families cope with losing a loved one, because I've
Mhm.
been there, right? So,
Yeah.
um, tell me more about your authentic gratitude communication framework. I haven't gone through the training. Yeah, I want to. I
Yeah.
want to go through
Yeah, I
that
know.
formally through the training, but just in talking to you and having our conversations with it, it's amazing. And I've used some of your gratitude tips and
Yeah,
advice,
techniques,
and
yeah.
it's been a technique, and it's been a game changer. So talk to us more about that.
Yeah, I'll tell you where it came from. I was, were involved with a leadership training program called the Nurses on Board Movement. It was funded by AARP, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, a couple others, and was this national nursing coalition movement. And I had this training model called the accomplishment culture that I was trying to validate, and I needed access to leaders. And by complete happenstance, got connected with the Texas Nursing Coalition, and they invited me to be a part of their launch of this Nurses on Board movement. And I started applying the accomplishment culture training. And the accomplishment culture training is around helping people visualize and see all the capabilities that they've developed over their lifetime and gained, align them with the accomplishments that they have, and make a compelling value proposition to their role, to others, et cetera. That was the foundational work. And that's still a very much of my core focus. Well, because of that, I started getting invited to speak on that topic, on accomplishment culture. And I'm not the best uh, um, speaker. I'm not. I mean, my part of it is my hearing
No,
loss.
you're
Part of it
you're
is
you're very good, actually. You're very good. You're not giving yourself enough credit.
well, you're being kind.
He's very eloquent in person. I remember when I had never seen him in person, and I was in Chicago in the hotel, and I'm like, that guy with the cowboy hat, that has to be Marion. And it
Yeah, oh
was.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So, no,
Well,
you're
thank
very eloquent. You have to give yourself more credit.
you're very kind. In the so I was speaking at a conference in 2016, and I was the opening speaker, and I was talking about accomplishment culture. Well, the speakers following, and I won't name them on the podcast, but were well respected. Everybody was so excited. They were the keynotes. They were talking about something that they were working on, and they talked about gratitude as a leadership skill set. And it was an interesting talk. It was a very interesting talk. But here's the problem for me. I'm a person that when I hear a podcast, or I hear a speaker, or I see some training, or I see any information, I want to go do something. I want to apply that. I want to see how it works. I want to know the process. I'm not a process person necessarily, but I want to go put it into action. And over my lifetime, hearing a lot of speakers, the ones that had that clarion call to some action were the ones that I gravitated toward. Well, they didn't, Dr. Hasbala, they did not tell me how to do it, how to show gratitude in a meaningful way as a leader. So on the plane back, I started writing down, um, and the only piece of note paper, I'll show it to you when next time we're together, because I still have it. The only piece of paper that I could find was the air sickness bag in the back pocket.
Yeah.
A little pro tip for you travelers: if you tear that bag and open it up, it's a great piece of notepad. And I do it almost every
That's
plane.
amazing.
Yeah, I know, it's so terrible. Yeah, I'm not gonna be sick, so I just pull it out. They replace them, whatever, and I open it up, and you can write on them. Some of them are wax, so you can't write them, but anyway, I've got all these notes on the plane, and I started writing down okay, if I'm going to say thank you for someone, what are going to be the key components of making that stick? Like them receiving it, message given, message received, etc. And went down the rabbit hole again. I keep using that term, but I became obsessed with, okay, what's the phrasing look like? What does that structure look like? And what came out of it was an acronym called SET, SET, which sounds super simple. And it was me trying to manipulate it a little bit, like use that as like a set the example as a leader, gratitude. I'm going to set the example. So that's where, and I realized as I played around with it, and this went on for several months, me reading, I still had access to my graduate school library online. I started pulling research papers around communications, et cetera. And what came out of it was the SET model, which was when we say thank you to someone, that we need them to grasp why the gratitude in a meaningful way. The first thing we need to do is be very specific. That's what the S stands for. So when we thank somebody for something, like for being on this podcast, I can say, thank you, Dr. Hasabala, for having me on your podcast. I'm specific about the thing I'm grateful for. The E stands for explanatory. And this is where we miss the boat on making gratitude stick. E stands for explanatory. Tell them why it matters. So in this case, why does it matter that I'm on your podcast? Is because once again, I have an opportunity to reach an audience it's not my audience. I get to spend time with you and talk more about this work, and you and I are planning on working on it together. And I get great value in just being able to be able to talk about it. So that's the explanatory part. I just explain why this has mattered, why it speaks to me to be on the podcast. I get to spread the word about authentic gratitude. I get to be a part of this. I get to spend time with you. All of those things fit into the E. The T was kind of a stretch at first. I couldn't think of a word for T, and I ended up coming up with the word thoughtful. And how can we be thoughtful when we say thank you? Well, the easiest way is to say the person's name, is just say their name. In your case, I would say, thank you, Hesham, for having me on this podcast for all the reasons I explained. And I said your name. So that was the original framework. Then I started reading the research around all that was already out there. This research was all out there. The thoughtful actually is a play on words. And this is the part that just forgive the pun. Here, it's going to be a pun or a reference. It did blow my mind, literally. Like, okay,
okay, that's
all right.
very
Okay,
interesting.
forgive the pun. We're talking about our brain. We're talking about our mind. It blew my mind. Okay, that's terrible. But here's the thing: when you hear your name, this is one of the research papers, and there's multiple research papers that talk about this, but the one that stood out: when you hear your name, there's a whole bunch of different parts of your brain that engage. Prefrontal cortex, the temporal medial cortex. But the one that is the most fascinating to me is the cuneus and the precuneus, which are parts of the brain in the occipital lobe. And I'm not a clinician, so if I get the anatomy wrong, I'll send you the work. But the cuneus is in the occipital lobe. It lights up when you hear your name. In other words, when we're communicating with someone and we say their name in the framework of gratitude, they see themselves in the gratitude experience. We've been teaching leaders, and now we've worked with multiple healthcare systems. We've launched a big research project with a major health system in Texas, and we're building on all that. But the core experience is, it is critically important as leaders and as individuals, just in relationships, is to say people's name. And one of the examples that I share when I do a talk is I have people tell me their full name. And in many cultures in the South and the Midwest in the United States, and actually around the world, when we hear our full name, if we're an adult, a lot of times the memory is negative because our parents only used our full name when we were in trouble.
That's right. That's right.
Right?
We talked about that, yeah.
Well, that's because we've created a neural pathway to that negative experience that's attached to our full name. So if you're young parents listening to the podcast, stop doing that with your children. Just stop. Like, you need to say their full name in positive way. So that was the framework. And so what we built on that is, or built on that framework of SET, specific, explanatory, thoughtful, was an entire suite of going way deeper. We were getting people to change behaviors in nursing units and physician nursing relationships. But it's not healthcare specific. I use it when I go to the coffee shop. I use it when I
Mhm.
go to the auto place. I use it with my family. Matter of fact, my family will push back and say, "Oh, you're using that authentic gratitude stuff again." Right? They're like, "Oh, you're doing that again." They're doing that again. But but it makes sense because that's an important piece. So that's the framework. That's what we're working on. And the whole goal is to help people be better at communicating with others, be it a leader, be it a peer, be it a subordinate, or be it in your personal life, to communicate in a way that's very authentic. And that's why the word's there. You can't fake it because they're going to see right through it. Um, and it is a framework, and that's the work we're doing.
That's amazing, and I'm telling you, I and everybody in the audience, I've used the STEP framework, and it really is a game changer, and it's just with people I interact with, people on the phone. We're talking on your show,
Yeah.
being one of the pain points of being a teleintensivist is having to deal with a clinical situation and your password not having your password expire. And so
Yeah.
now I'm
Yeah.
stressed out on IT because there's a crisis at the bedside and I can't get into the record to put orders. That's super stress. That's super stressful. And when you talk to the person and they always say their name, and then when you say, thank you, John, for helping me get my password reset and getting me back into the system, it makes a huge difference. I can even tell on the phone and in person, it's a big difference when you say thank you, blank, whoever,
Yeah.
for your help today. It's a huge difference. And I think it's something we need to do more of, not only as leaders, but as people to make that connection. Like we were talking on your show about a smile.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
where I come from, a smile is an act of charity.
Yeah.
It's something meaning I'm not like pitying you, but it's like charity that I can give someone else that and it's like and it's that connection that you can make with another human being, even for 5 seconds. But that kind of human connection, we felt it in the pandemic when we were not allowed to be together. And we can talk about whether that was good or bad. I don't want to get into that. And people yearned to get back together. Like, my company had initially banned travel in the beginning of the pandemic, and the clients were like, "We need to see you on site. We need you to be here." Right? The human. I really solidified the fact that the human being is a social being and has to be with other people, and we have to connect with other people. And being you in person, I could see you on video a million times, but
Yeah.
seeing you in person is a whole different experience. Same thing with my team, with my leadership. Whenever we're going to have our medical director summit in September. I love it. I love seeing everybody in person. It's so awesome. There's something to being in person and getting to shake someone's hand. So like your framework it's really amazing. It really, really is.
And the pushback we've gotten a lot is like, that's so simple. And a lot of people, a lot of leaders, when they first heard about, and still do to this day, like, well, that's, I'm grateful. I tell them thank you. And, um, I understand that people think it's so simple that, oh, I do that. Well, here's the challenge. Manners, if you will, when you say thank you and you're welcome, or now what's popular is no problem, whatever the response is, or whatever it might be, thank you, or it wasn't a problem, whatever, all those different things that people say, that's manners are habit. Habit is something we just do automatically. It's like, it's a natural response. We have to move habit to ritual. Ritual is an act that means something to us, and it has to be really connected to who we are. So that we have to move it from that to this. A lot of people are crazy about Chick-fil-A, and I'm going to be clear here. I live near Atlanta, and Chick-fil-A rules the roost. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. I just
Really?
it's okay.
Really?
I'm a fan of the customer experience, but I'm not
Oh,
necessarily.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm a
The
fan
customer
of the customer
experience,
experience.
that's huge. Like, that is
Massive.
what brings you back.
Exactly. Exactly. And
And the sugar and the breading, I can
and the
tell.
sugar and the breading. Exactly.
There is
Yeah.
that's what bringing people back. It's the sugar and the breading.
Sugar
Nothing
and the
against
breading.
Chick-fil-A, but I know
Yeah, I
I'm
get it.
on to y'all.
I get I'm on to
Anytime
y'all.
I'm with
Yeah.
somebody in the South, I start using y'all much more. So I apologize.
Love it.
I'm a
No,
Yankee. I don't normally use it. So
it's okay. You can use it, and you use it in the right context. Here's the thing about that phrase that everybody loves is my pleasure. And if you look at that from a neuro perspective, what happens in the brain when we hear my pleasure? If they said it's a pleasure rather than my pleasure, in other words, had they not used the pronoun of my and owned their acceptance of your gratitude, you wouldn't have the same experience. If they say it's a pleasure, that's an abstract, it's a pleasure, and then you go on to serve you. But when they say my pleasure, when we say thank you, that is where the bond comes for the gratitude experience. We've expressed gratitude and we've seen that the person getting the gratitude receives it. Now, it's a trained response that they train, but the reason why that's so powerful is because of the pronoun. Smiling is almost the same thing, because here's what happens. It triggers in our brain dopamine, it triggers serotonin, it triggers oxytocin. Oxytocin is that part of the brain that we start to bond. So
yeah,
smiling is so important. Personalizing, receiving it, saying my pleasure, saying being grateful the other direction, all those things. If you want to think about it, there's the proof to me that most leaders don't really do it. They say they do it, but how many times have you been in a room where a leader, or been in a meeting, or where he said or she said thank you to the group, but they didn't make eye contact, which is another incredibly powerful. And by the way, for those of you who listen to podcasts, if you're on Zoom meetings a lot, look at the camera when you're talking. You don't have to look at the camera all the time, but look at the camera when you're talking, because they're
absolutely. People don't
like,
realize that there's a little light on the camera. There's a little light on the camera, like
yeah,
they're for a reason. For a reason.
very reason. I don't now, but when I first started doing my podcast, I had a big paper red dot that I put right before my camera. Now I have a new camera that has a light so I can see it. But
Yeah,
that's really important. So back to what you were talking about. The last thing I'll share with you in that regard is, when we make eye contact, when we speak and say thank you, specifically explanatory and thoughtful, we could also use that in conflict situations to reduce the conflict. And that's another thing that we're working on right now. We call it courageous acknowledgement, where we teach people to use gratitude in stressful situations. So that's some of the work that we're doing. And last thing I'll say about eye contact, and then we'll keep talking, but the word respect, I found this out. The root word of that is the same root word that is used in spectacle, and it's to look back at. It's to reconsider respect. If we say we respect the people we work with, or the people in our family, or whoever, people in the public, and we don't make eye contact, or we don't smile, or we don't say thank you, then we lessened how they see us in that regard. So when we think, if you say, I respect others, well, you can demonstrate it by saying thank you, saying their name, and making eye contact. That's the
Wow.
word.
Oh, oh my God. This is leadership training for me. I mean, if and I pledge, I told on your show, I pledge to do it
Yeah.
better with my family because I'm
Yeah,
not
that's what we
very good
gotta
with
do.
my
Yeah,
family.
yeah, oh, yeah, we gotta do it. We gotta do it,
And
so
it's just, and you mentioned about how simple it is, but it's
yeah,
funny how the simplest things are the ones that we're liable to overlook. Something that's so simple. Oh yeah, well, yeah, thank you. But I loved how you said habit to turn it into ritual. From a religious perspective, if we pray out of habit, it's not the same experience as if you take the prayer and make it a ritual, where it's an active connection with the divine.
yeah,
It's a completely different, and those who are spiritual leaders want us to have not prayer or the things that become habit, which are thoughtless,
yep,
but
yeah.
thoughtful ritual. I loved how you said that.
Yeah, that was the revelation that came to me in one day when I had a hospital CEO at a conference where I was the keynote speaker come up to me after the show, or after the show, not after the show, after the speech. And he said, when you first started talking, we were in the lobby checking out of the hotel because I was having to catch a flight to get somewhere else. We're in the lobby and the CEO comes up to me and he introduces himself. And he goes, when you first started talking, I thought this is going to be another kumbaya. Everybody's sat around in a circle. This is exactly what he said. Hold hands and warm and fuzzy thing. And, just another motivational speaker with no um, substance. And it's exactly what he said. And I'm trying to check out and he's standing behind me telling me all this. And then his countenance changed dramatically. Like his completely the way he was posturing and standing and the way he was talking completely changed. He said, but about halfway through your talk, I realized that I had lost, and I wrote this down and I talk about it a lot ever since, and we built it into the training. He goes, I have lost my heart for gratitude. It was so powerful. And he became very emotional right there in the chat. We had to get out of the checkout line, like to finish the conversation. So I thought about that. I pondered that, what makes something move from being something you do to being part of your heart? Well, that's the difference is habit to ritual. And that's where that came from. And that's where that came from. And it made so much more sense to me around that. That's where that moving things and now it's like, okay, we have to decide is what I'm doing as a leader or as a person engaging with other people, is this meaningful? Is it a meaningful exchange or is it just a casual, whatever? It changes how we talk to them. It changes how we connect with them. It changes about what we say and what we do. Like it changes us in our actions. And I'll tell you, a hypocrite will come out of us in a hurry if we don't move it from I'm so appreciative of you to I appreciate you because you talked about that on the
Yeah,
on our show, my show, around the difference between telling them thank you, but telling them thank you, appreciating them and what
right.
you appreciate them for. That's where the difference takes place. And one other study we showed, and I'll talk about it. Here's a quick trick, not trick, it's not a trick. Here's a quick thing to learn. Leaders who go into a meeting and talk about pride first. I'm proud of we hit this KPI. I'm proud of our quality metrics. I'm proud. If they start with that and don't start with gratitude, the studies show, and there's a couple different ones out there, show that the subordinates, the people that they're trying to lead, trust actually drops
Really?
because they
Wow.
reflect. Yeah. Oh yeah. Trust drops. And here's why the trust drops is because there's somewhat this kind of cynical nature is like, oh, we hit our KPI again. He's going to get, or she's going to get her bonus, or she's going to get
Oh,
promoted.
wow. Yeah, yeah.
Right. But if the leader walks into the room and the first thing he or she does, and it has to come from the heart, it cannot come from being manipulative because they'll see right through it, if he comes in or she comes into the room and says, we hit our goal for this month, and I want to thank you individually and as a group, and then take a moment to point out why they're grateful for the team members. The studies show, and the studies are there. I didn't have to do any of these. I just found them. People are already down this study line. Trust goes way up in that person. So
Wow.
one of the things we've been really teaching leaders is like, not just leaders, but individuals, is like leading with gratitude it's not bad to say, I'm proud of you, my child, or proud of my team later. But if you're proud of hitting a goal that can be perceived as edifying you and not the team or not the organization or not the purpose or not the patient, the trust drops.
Wow.
That was
Wow.
fascinating to learn.
That's fascinating. Oh my God. We're coming up near the end of time now, but I could sit and talk to you for hours and hours. And I've learned so much, and I'm going to pledge I'm going to pledge to be more meaningful with my family first. And I think I've actually, I've actually preached about this, that every interaction, we should strive to make every interaction with anyone meaningful. And the things that I learned from you today will go a long way in helping that. And I pledge to start with my family first, and then as a leader second, and as a physician second, and then as a leader third. So I've learned so much. I can't wait to continue to collaborate with you. I'm so happy you came on the podcast. Marion, I really appreciate you. I thank you, Marion, for coming on the show, teaching me how to be a better leader, being the man that you are. I look forward to the wonderful things we will be blessed to do together.
Thank you, and thank you so much. And Hashim, and it is an honor to be with you. It's an honor to be with the audience, but it's an honor because we've been you and we've been gifted with a platform that we can help others. And so thank you for that opportunity for me to scale that with you. And so, Hashim, thank you so much. And I look forward to connecting with your audience at some point.
Absolutely. We'll definitely have you back. Take care. Thank you for listening. Sign up at healthcaremusings.com to get every episode delivered directly to your email. And please don't forget to leave a 5-star review. Thank you so much.